عزيزي المشاهد، السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. فعاليات العرب في النمسا. هل ما زالت فعاليات العرب من باب الترفيه والرفاهية؟ ما مدى التنسيق بين المنتديات والجمعيات والمنظمات العربية في النمسا تحديدا وفي أوروبا عموما؟ هل المأساة تكرر نفسها في بلاد المهجر بأن يعتلي تلك المؤسسات والجمعيات من ذوي الاحتكار السلطوي والانفراد بالرأي وفقط من باب المظهر، وينسون الغاية التي من أجلها أسست تلك المؤسسات والجمعيات؟ أم الأمر مبشر بالخير، حيث تلك المنظمات والجمعيات يقوم عليها أناس مخلصون تعلموا الدرس ويريدون حقا تحقيق غايات سامية لخدمة أبناء المهاجرين في المهجر وكذلك وطنهم الأم في العالم العربي، واستطاعوا إحراز وتحقيق ما لم يستطع تحقيقه العديد من الأنظمة. فمثلا فعالية الخير لجمع التبرعات لمساعدة أبناء الشعب الفلسطيني ومعاناة الشعب العراقي في ظل الاحتلال. كذلك دور الجالية العربية من مسيحيين ومسلمين، نجد حقا هناك تكاتف بين أبناء الجالية العربية ونحسبهم جميعا على خير، فإنهم يريدون تحسين مستوى الأداء ويفعلون جمعياتهم ومنظماتهم كي يكونوا قادرين على التكامل مع المجتمع الغربي. التأثير الفعلي للمهاجرين للدفاع عن قضايا أوطانهم العربية. عزيزي المشاهد، يسعدنا أن نوافيكم دائما بكل ما يحدث من فعاليات على أرض النمسا خاصة وفي أوروبا عامة. أحييكم وأشكركم وإلى اللقاء، والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
Panelists, the audience, everybody who contributed, and I think what we could observe this morning, this was a very civilized dialogue. There were very hard questions, and I didn't feel any resentments, nothing holding us back facing these questions. But I'm sure that there's undercurrents, this is very human, since we are a polite humankind here. I would encourage you, meet Farah Bandit. She is representing the American Outreach Program, talking over years to the Muslim youth across Europe and Asia. And I think we will hear her insights, her analysis, the fresh voices from the ground. Please come and listen to her.
Thank you so much, and it's a pleasure to be here in Vienna to discuss how the West and Islam cannot just live together, but thrive together. This is a great group of people assembled here, and I feel humbled to be part of it. Women Without Borders should be commended for doing a superb job in bringing us all together to discuss such an important topic. Thank you.
Then we will have Parvin Ali, the founder and director of the Fatima Network. It's a grassroots organization caring for the Muslim and non-Muslim disadvantaged female communities in the UK. I think a very noble enterprise. We want to learn more about it. Zümrüt Gülbay, who is a Turkish-born professor. Well, she wasn't born as a professor, of course. She was born as a typical Gastarbeiterkind. Her parents came when she was 2, at the age of 2, to Germany, and then she made her way in a very brilliant way, in a very brilliant fashion through school, and she became the youngest ever female professor in Germany of Turkish descent, on top of it. So she's a wonderful role model, not only for the Muslim community, but for all of us, for all women.
Our next speaker is Zumrat Gulabiya Pasher, and she is a professor in Nuremberg, Germany, as well as a member of the German Muslim Summit.
Hello. Thank you very much for the invitation. As I read the invitation from the Women Without Borders, I was really astonished why I was part of such a speaker group. I mean, I am not any member of any organization, I am not a member of any political party, I'm just a boring law professor. Nothing more. You can ask my students. So, today, many wise people gives us a lot of possible answers. So, what should I do? Give you more answers? More imagines? Well, I don't think so. I think I make it short and for you quite painless. I hope that I only can take you and be part of my experience to live in Germany as a woman, as a Muslim, and as a girl who wants to get a career, not more or less. And I want to say that what I have to say is a very, very personal view on this case. And I'm sure that I ignorate many problems and many special points, but what I can only do is to say how I see, personally I see, what we can do to live together. First of all, ladies and gentlemen, I believe that there is no one general answer on these questions. Because to live together means to analyze the surrounding. That means I have to look in which country, under which government, under which political structure I have to live. That means let us just formulate one fact very clearly. In Europe, ladies and gentlemen, the Muslims are a minority. Not more and not less. And on this fact is nothing a discrimination, nothing, it's a fact. If we start to analyze this fact, if we give interpretations to this fact, we begin with the discrimination, not before. So, if a minority lives in a society and the majority have decisions, they have constitutions, they have laws, and they have a government. The first thing of all should be, there is no discussing point about acceptance, this surrounding. You can't change it on the political way. You can change it with changing the political majorities, by electing, or what else. But you can't change it by answering any question and by answering to any questions. If I don't get what I want, you're an extremist, you're an Islam hater, or you're a racist. That's not the truth. If Muslims demand respect and space, they are right. They have to get this. They have to get the respect and the demand in every society. But allow me to demand something for the other group, for the Christs and for the secular people. They also have the right to get respect. To start to talk each other is only the starting. The result of the talk together should be the respect for each group. Not the tolerance. I don't like this word. Tolerance seems a little bit like, oh, you're so cute, but I like you. I mean respect, ladies and gentlemen. I'm part of a Muslim community, and I recognize a lot of things. Not from the majority in this community, but from secular people, they talk about the unbeliever and the pork meat eater. Is this respect, ladies and gentlemen? No. But if we don't give them the respect, how we can expect that we get one? We educate our young people and we educate our child to be proud of their roots, to be proud of their religion, and that is good that we do that. Everyone should be proud about who you are and what is his religion. But in the same way, we have to teach our young people that they have to be respectful with other different culture and religion. If we don't do that, we don't fulfill the duties of our religion. And I can't accept any imam or anyone who talks with me about unbeliever people. There is no one unbeliever in this world. Everyone is equal. Everyone. Society. But every minority have also to accept living peaceful together means to find compromise. You can't live in a majority situation and accept that everything what you wish is fulfilling. Let me give you an example. In our religion, it is more or less very worth to preach five times a week, a day. But if you have an appointment, if you work in a lawyer office, or you work in a factory, or you work in a shop, can you accept that your chef who has an economical thinking and who has to think about his business, give you the opportunity to pray five times a day? I mean, it will be perfectly if you have such an economical situation. But if you don't do that, and if you can accept it, that doesn't mean every businessman is an Islam hater. It is not. It means that there are other reasons why you have sometimes to make unpopular decisions.
One of the difficult questions in the monolithic voice is that it has been frustrating in the past that a lot of people have been very keen and almost insistent to label particularly Muslim women. And I think the time has come where we reject the labels and we, as the Malaysian minister said, really look at the true spirit of diversity and learn to celebrate it, not just merely tolerate it. Over the past few years, Oxfam in particular has been working with civil societies in Muslim countries to build their capacity and amplify these voices. As I mentioned, I myself am a field mouse and value no doubt what my religion offers in terms of peace and of liberation. I equally have no doubt that there is a wide gap between what is preached and what is practiced. In that sense, my goal has always been to address this gap rather than analyze and justify it. I refuse to adopt an apologetic tone or a defensive tone because that gap exists in all societies and is something that as a human being, everyone should be challenging and addressing. And that's why I've joined the fight against poverty, oppression, and corruption as a member of the human race and not merely as a Muslim woman. We are very fortunate today to have a diverse panel who will help us push this conversation further. We'll start with Farah Khaled. And since Edith has already given a bio of the panels, I think I'll just introduce them by title, which will allow them more time to have their discussion. Farah is a senior advisor for European and Eurasian Affairs, and she works with the State Department. Farah?
Now, it's symbolic that this meeting is taking place in this beautiful capital, known for its history with Islam. Today, the gates of Vienna are open to understanding, to tolerance, and to conviviality. However, not everything is sweetness and light. If we want to solve a problem, we cannot avert our eyes. We need to understand the nature of it intrinsically. We must not ignore history, and and we should not be a slave to it either. We need to see it for what it is and be familiar with all of its strands in our time for future generations. But we cannot despair. We need to make a realistic assessment. We need to be practical in finding solutions to problems of our day and steadfast in implementing them. We are here today to discuss how people of different religions can get along, not just country by country, but also when we live in the same community and are part of the same community. The presence of large numbers of Muslims in Western societies is a relatively new phenomenon, or I should say, given Europe's long history, an old phenomenon that has returned. Let's not forget that Spain and Portugal and Italy were Muslim in whole or in part for many centuries ago. All action invites reaction. The Reformation had a counter-Reformation, and the Dark Ages a Renaissance. Even in art, Impressionism was followed by Expressionism. And so it isn't surprising or historical for the new advent of Muslim communities in Western countries to occasion friction. The question, rather, is how we react to it. How do we stop evil people, both Muslims and non-Muslims, from opportunistically taking advantage of inevitable tensions in human interaction? Here, we should heed the words of that great European, Edmund Burke, who said, quote, "All that is necessary for evil to succeed is that good men do nothing." I would only amend that to say good men and women. The question before this panel is how to live together. For this, we need to understand why sometimes we don't do it all that well. It does no good to wave away the problems that the newcomer has in adapting himself or herself to an entirely new situation, or that the children of immigrants have in dealing with exclusion in the land in which they were born. These problems are real enough, and regard for our interests, if not compassion, demands that we pay attention to them and seek to alleviate them. These problems will be addressed either by us or by the extremists who need recruits for their suicide bomber squads. Or it will be fanned by nationalistic xenophobes who want to end all of immigration. Likewise, we succumb to wishful thinking if we try to ignore or wave aside the gripes, some of them legitimate, of members of the host populations. So, a Muslim. And I know from personal experience about the delicate balances required of a Muslim in a Western society, or of any immigrant or first-generation American for that matter, many of these are not questions limited to Muslims. After all of these caveats, let's delve into the issues. The first is, what are the forces preventing integration? And by forces, by the way, I don't mean anything sinister or conspiratorial. I mean technological, economic, and cultural forces, both internal to the immigrant populations in Europe and indigenous to European populations. There are many. Muslims have a different religion from Christian Europeans. They may dress differently. They may also look different from our conception of a typical European. They may live in Antwerp physically, but their TV programming they watch, the websites they visit, and the music they hear comes from somewhere else. When they visit their home villages, however, the villages where their parents and their grandparents came from, those places are alien as well. These youths have fallen through a gaping cultural crack. Nature abhors a vacuum, especially in matters cultural. So an Islamic identity provided what was missing. Radical Islam then opportunistically offered meaning, purpose, excitement. We have all heard about the mosques where political indoctrination trumps worship. As we think about possible solutions, one that occurs is for civil society and the private sector is to find a way to balance your identity and your background in a way that works for you and that honors your past, lets you succeed in your present, and propels you into the future. It has to work for you, but also it has to work for your new community and new country.
And last but not least, and I think Ed has put it in very proper words, Amr Khaled. Amr Khaled is, I don't know whether I put it properly, I just say it as it comes into my mind. He's a pop preacher, and he attracts huge crowds of young people across the Muslim world, across the Middle East, and I think we should all listen to him because he really has this incredible gift to relate with these young people, especially with the male youngs who are at risk. You know, as Shirin said, it's easier to talk to the females, but we must reach out to the males. And here we have a male in our middle who is so gifted to do so. And I just want to add on, in the morning we picked him up in the hotel, and he was followed by a crowd of admirers, you know, and cheerleaders. All of a sudden, everybody wanted to have an autograph.
يعني أولا أنا سعيد بالدعوة الكريمة اللي تلقيتها لحضور المؤتمر ده. أنا حاسس أن المؤتمر جمع مجموعة كلها حريصة، كلها عندها الويلنج، عندها الاستعداد إنها عايزة تقرب وجهات النظر، عايزة تشتغل كلنا مع بعض. أنا الرسالة الحقيقة اللي أنا قدمتها في المؤتمر هنا إن أنا عندي رسالة بوجهها للمسلمين، بوجهها للغرب. في نفس الوقت أنا بقول نعم للاندماج الإيجابي للمرأة المسلمة في المجتمع الغربي، مع احتفاظ وصيانة كل طرف لثقافته، لجذوره، لقيمه. فدي كانت الرسالة الأساسية اللي أنا وجهتها. وأنا قلت إن احنا علشان نستطيع إن احنا نقنع المرأة والشباب المسلم اللي يعيش في أوروبا بأهمية الاندماج الإيجابي في المجتمع، إن احنا محتاجين نراعي نقاط أساسية. أول حاجة نراعي مشاعر المسلمين الخاصة فيما يتعلق بخصوصيات دينهم، وده كان تعليقا على قضية الكرتون، وكان تعليقا على قضايا الحجاب اللي أثيرت في أوروبا بالنسبة للمرأة. فأول نقطة إن مراعاة المشاعر الخاصة للمسلمين واحترام خصوصياتهم كناس تعيش في المجتمع الغربي. النقطة الثانية إن اللي أنا طرحتها إن احنا محتاجين نسمع للمسلمين، محتاجين نسمع للمرأة، محتاجين نسمع للشباب، وان دي نقطة مهمة جدا، وان احنا لابد ان احنا نفتح فورمز ونفتح منتديات. المنتديات دي تبقى عاملة زي قنوات اتصال بين الشباب وبين المرأة المسلمة من ناحية، وبين الجهات الغربية من ناحية. نسمع ليهم، نتحاور معاهم، ناخد وندي معاهم. وان انا ضربت مثل لتجربة انا مريت بيها، ان احنا لما جينا فتحنا الحوار مع الشباب المسلم، وقمت عن طريق الموقع بتاعي ان انا سألت الشباب المسلم في البلاد العربية وفي الغرب ايه هي احلامكم لل100 سنة لل20 سنة اللي جاية، فجالي 700,000 حلم. يعني اقصد بكده قد ايه هم مشتاقين لحد يسمعهم ويكلمهم. بداية الاندماج الايجابي حوار واستماع لمشاعرهم، لأحاسيسهم، مشاكلهم ايه، بيعانوا من ايه. دي النقطة الثانية اللي انا طرحتها. النقطة الثالثة والاخيرة ان لغاية امتى هتفضل الميديا وهيفضل من يدير العالم نركز على مناطق الاختلاف بين المسلمين وبين الغرب؟ ليه ما نركز على مناطق الاوفرلابز، على مناطق المشترك؟ وانا بزعم ان مناطق المشترك اكبر بكتير جدا من مناطق الاختلاف. لماذا لا توضع الايدي في ايدين بعضهم، وتوجد الرموز في العالم كله اللي تحط ايديها في ايدين بعضها، ونعمل نتورك للمعتدلين اللي يرفضوا الصدام، اللي مؤمنين بالحوار واللي مؤمنين. لماذا لا نتعاون سويا لتوسيع منطقة الاوفرلابز وتقليل منطقة الاختلاف؟ لو ركزنا على مناطق المشترك وتجنبنا مناطق الاختلاف ولو لحين، بالتأكيد ده سيؤدي إلى اندماج إيجابي. دي كانت مجموعة الرسائل اللي احنا قدمناها في المؤتمر. الحقيقة كل الكلام اللي اتقال في المؤتمر كان في اتجاه مزيد من التعاون العالمي من أجل التشارك لمستقبل أفضل للجميع. ودي في حد ذاتها رسالة جيدة وعالمية، ورسالة احنا كمسلمين نؤمن ان ده جزء من ديننا، لان احنا نؤمن بالتعايش، لاننا نؤمن بالقرآن اللي قال وجعلناكم شعوبا وقبائل لتعارفوا تتبادلوا المنافع وتتفاهموا. هذا جزء من قرآننا. احنا نؤمن بالتعايش لان قرآننا وديننا علمنا ان اختلافنا عن بعضنا ثراء مش فقر، وان قبولنا للاختلاف يؤدي الى مزيد من ثراء المجتمعات اللي انا عايش فيها. دي كانت الافكار الاساسيه اللي دار حواليها كلامنا في المؤتمر. انا بكرر الشكر بشده لكل من نظموا هذا المؤتمر، يعني للاستقبال الجميل اللي استقبلنا فيه كل المحاضرين وكل المتكلمين في المؤتمر. بشكر النمسا على حكومة وشعبا على الحفاوة اللي وجدناها من الشعب النمساوي. اعتقد انها خطوة ايجابية، اعتقد ان في وراها خطوات افضل وافضل في اتجاه التعايش، في اتجاه الاندماج الايجابي. الحقيقة انا موافق معاك ان احنا محتاجين مجهود حقيقي، ان احنا كمان يبقى لنا مبادرات في هذا الاتجاه. انا يعني لا اخفي عليك ان احنا محتاجين ان احنا نفكر ايضا في مبادرات لعرض افكارنا ولعرض رؤيتنا ولعرض من اين جئنا وكيف نفكر. انا اتفق معك تماما، وان كنت انا عن نفسي قمنا بمبادرة. لو تذكر أيام الدنمارك، أيام مأساة أو الرسوم الكرتونية المسيئة للرسول، وكان هناك هياج في العالم الإسلامي، فأنا اخترت أنا واخترت معايا 40 من الشباب العربي والمسلم، شباب وبنات فيهم محجبات وفيهم مش محجبات، واخترنا ان احنا نطلع كشكل ممثل لشبابنا العربي كمبادرة مننا، ان احنا رحنا للدنمارك نقول لهم احنا جايين نمد ايدينا، نريد الحوار ونريد الحوار معكم. فدي يعني كانت احد المبادرات. انا ليا بس نقطة اخيرة احب اوجهها ليكم هنا في التلفزيون، واحب اوجهها للمشاهدين والشعب النمساوي. الشباب العربي والمسلم ليس كما ترون في التلفزيونات بيفجروا وهمجيين ومتطرفين. هذه الأقلية القليلة، هذا ليس تعبير عن الشباب العربي. الشباب العربي والمسلم عايز يبني، الشباب العربي والمسلم عايز ينجح، عايز يتعايش، وأنا خبير بيهم وعايش في وسطيهم وبسمع منهم هذا الكلام، وأستطيع أن أنا أجزم بهذا الكلام. الشباب العربي مادد إيديه، يريد لأي إنسان يستطيع أنه هو يساعده ويتشارك معاه لبناء مستقبل أفضل ليه وللجميع، هو مستعد لكده. فأنا بأؤكد هذا المعنى.
يعني بالنسبة لصناع الحياة،
نعم،
جميل، تعبير جميل جدا، نعم. ولكن أنا نفسي يتغير هذا التعبير إلى الصناع في الحياة، لأنه صانع الحياة طبعا هو الخالق سبحانه وتعالى.
يعني أنا فاهم، والله أنا قيلت لي كتير، لكن ممكن أختلف معاك إن المسمى أبسط من كده. يعني أنا مش عايز أعقد المسمى، هو أبسط من كده، هو توجيه ومبادرة كفاية سلبية، كونوا إيجابيين، انطلقوا ونموا بلادكم. يعني
جميل. السؤال الثاني المهم، الأخ وجيه من الأقباط المصري،
نعم،
والأقباط عندهم شيء في صدرهم انهم مقهورين ومظلومين، قد لا يكون يعني بقصد، ولكن العادة جرت انه يكون في نوع من التهميش بالنسبة للمسيحيين في مصر وفي العالم العربي. وانا اعرف انه كثير من المسلمين حريصين كل الحرص على ازالة هذه.
عايزني اقولها لك بنكتة ولا اقولها لك بجد؟
اقولها بنكتة بجد.
انا متأكد منه ان تاريخنا في مصر ما كانش فيه الحساسيات دي، وكان التعايش على اعلى مستوى، وكان التفاهم على اعلى مستوى، واحنا كنا عايشين جيران وما زلنا يعني رغم الاحداث القليله، لكن عشنا جيران واصدقاء ومعارف، وبيننا الود والاحترام والتقدير والعمل سويا، ما كانش عندنا اي مشكله. انا في اعتقادي انها ازمه حريه،
أزمة حريه للمجتمع،
وليست ازمه اقباط. ازمه مجتمع، أزمة مجتمع يشعر بغياب الحرية، فمن يستطيع أن يكون قويا يأكل الضعيف.
هل تعتقد المحتل القديم كان ليه رغبة في استمرارية أو خلق هذا النوع من
لا، يعني كفاية. لا أريد أن أرمي دائما على نظرية المؤامرة، ولكن أريد أن أقول إحنا عندنا مشكلة حرية تؤثر بالسلب على الجميع، على الجميع.
يعني إذا وجدت الحرية تحل جميع المشاكل.
أعتقد إن وجود الحرية يخلق مناخ صحي يساعد الجميع أن يتفاهم ببساطة وأنا لما جيت عملت صناع الحياة شارك معي مسيحيين. وأنا لما جيت اتكلمنا في دعوة للتعايش، مجرد إن إحنا فتحنا الموضوع وإن ده جزء من ديننا، تفاعل الشباب وقالوا وبدأوا يرسلوا لي على الموقع على الإنترنت مواقف غاية في الجودة لعلاقتهم بزمايلهم المسيحيين. إذن المشكلة أبسط من أن تتحول إلى ظاهرة معقدة، لكن هناك أزمة خاصة بالمجتمع وليس خاصة بفئة محددة.
أشكرك وأتمنى لك يوم سعيد.
If you want to build a better future for the Muslim women and youth, and Muslim youth here in Europe, we need first to convince them with this message. This message, yes, for the positive integration in the Western society, with maintaining each part to his roots, his culture, and his values. Again, if we want to build a better future for the ethnic minorities, for the Muslim women and youth in Europe, we need to convince them with this message. Yes, for the positive integration in the Western society, we maintain each part to his values, his culture, and his roots. And to convince the Muslim women and youth with this message, we have to consider three points. First, and 3 points for sure for women. First, the issue of hijab. Second, to listen to the problems of the women and to make dialogue with them. Third, to looking for the overlaps areas. About the overlaps. When you're talking always about the differences, you put the modest voices in the Middle East in a very critical situation and give the chance to the extreme to say they attack us, we have to attack them, and started the fire like that. Why not to say, let's find who can talk about the overlaps. By the way, I did a survey between the youth last year to ask them, are you ready to start your small business? And I asked them, you know, to start your small business and open this type of business, you need partnerships with many bodies in the world, with the West, with the multinational companies. Are we ready for that? I can say 90% of the Arab and Muslim youth said yes. We extended our hands to say, I extended my hand. So you put this. We extended our hands to anybody, to any organization can help us for a better future. Believe me, you watching the television for this few numbers of youth who make bombs and destroy. This is not the Arab Muslim. I'm sure this is not the majority. The majority of the Arab and Muslim youth want to build, not to destroy. They extend their hands, and they survey with me, and I will give it to them here. They extend their hands. We want to build. Who can put his hands in our another message. Oh. Oh. Last year, we started a program in the Middle East. The name of the program called Coexistence. And I said in this program, I believe in coexistence because I believe in Quran. Because Quran said very clear, we created you in different colors, in different cultures, in different languages, in different religions, to exchange benefits. Quran believe that differences is something rich, because without these differences, the earth will be poor. So, when I started this program, many voices in the Middle East said, you said that here in the East, but who believe in that in the West? Where is the figures in the West? Who convince the people in the West with the same message? You understand what I mean? I mean we need from this conference many hands to say, yes, we want to work together to talking about the overlaps, to say how huge the overlaps is. I think if we win from this conference without something like that, we need partnerships, beliefs that we will focus on the overlaps areas between the Muslims and the West. And I think Europe can lead this project. It will be a new project. Europe can start this project. And can you imagine, I dream a conference somewhere in Europe. The name of the conference, Harmony Conference. And the conference talking about toward culture against violence and injustice. And in this conference, all the figures from the world, the modelists, figures come to say, yes, we want to overlap. And the media always looking for the new, something new. And if they found all these figures talking about the overlaps, can you imagine what will happen in the next step? And can you imagine this network of these huge figures in the world talking together? Yes, we need this overlap. We're not talking about the differences because we want to avoid the clash. This is my 3 points. The summary finally that we need 2 things. The practical ideas. First, we need to create new ideas to encourage the women and in Europe to talk and to listen to them and to make their own. Like what I do now. We can work together to find what are the new ideas to talk with the youth and women in Europe. This is the first idea. The second idea, a conference, Harmony Conference, a forum in Europe. This forum for the figures who want the overlaps areas to focus on it. These 2 ideas, I think, with respect to the feelings and care of the feelings of the Muslims, I believe these 3 points can lead for a positive integration, can lead for a better future for the Muslims, women and youth in Europe. Thank you very much.
find new models that might be based on global experience or Eastern models, or to ask for the conditions that are being placed on integration, that those conditions be negotiated and agreed upon, is equal to being a disloyal citizen. And I think that that's one of the missing debates, is how do we really honor the Western tradition of challenging, of asking, of holding government, of holding society accountable, and not being accused of not being a proper citizen. And I think that I'd like to pose that to the panelists just to think about, but we'll take a few questions. I'd like the previous moderators' objective of doing one side.
Their culture, you talk about their feelings. I'd like to put you a question. Why would you put or draw the line as and not interfere, because it's their culture, whoever their culture is?
We're going to take
to explain to you what I mean. I have a friend here he's in Germany. His name is Usama. Usama, I talked with him a lot about the positive integration. I told him, Usama, you took a lot from this society. You have to give. And we have, our Prophet Muhammad said, the hand who give better than the hand who took. So, Usama, you mustn't to be in this society to take the benefits, health and education and so on and so without giving. So he said, okay. You know what he did? He went to the firefighter. He went to the fire station, and he told them, it's in his village in Germany, I want to work volunteer with you. The man of the head of the station told him, by the way, we didn't stop the fire in the Muslims' houses only, because there is in his background that the Muslims in Europe only working for the sake of the Muslims. You understand what I mean? So he said to him, by the way, we are not working for the Muslims' houses only. And Usama told him, and because that I'm coming, because I want to share you to stop the fires in all these houses. Usama told me, after 6 months, I became one of the better people. All the village loved him, and I feel that I respected myself. I feel that I did something, I took and I give. This is what I mean with the positive integration. How can we help this society? In the overlap areas, there is their agenda, and here is our agenda. Can we find this area to find here we will work together? That's not mean all your agenda I will accept it. There is parts of your agenda I will not accept it. And there is part of my agenda I will not accept it. But can we find this area to work together? This is what I mean with the positive integration. This is part of what you...
I've been doing this job for 8 months, and I've been going through Europe, and as I said in my speech, I've been in 40 different cities throughout Europe. I can say without a doubt that people are sincere. They're really trying to figure out how to do this. You can't just switch something on a box and make everything okay. The conversations are painful and they're difficult. It's identity, it's youth, it's how do you make this balance. I think, when I was in Barcelona with you, the things we talked about for the Pakistani community in Barcelona, how you see yourself, what is important, is framed differently across Europe. And so I don't think one can say it's this or it's this. And certainly, in our country, in America, there is no one answer to the way the many hundreds of immigrant groups that have come forward have accepted that identity. There's compromise everywhere. There's balance everywhere. And I think that the right answer is the answer for you. That's what I was getting at in my speech. It's an individual thing. But I think that the thing you need to look at, frankly, for Muslims within Europe, is a way in which you can work with society to have...
I never didn't said that Islam is not democratic. That was not my speech. Okay. But especially the scarf problem, the problem of a teacher who has an appointment with a public appointment, is exactly that kind of unpopular decisions that might be somewhat accepted from everyone. Let me explain this one. This teacher had the possibility to go to court, to go to first instance, second instance, and also to the third instance. She also had the possibility to go to any political party that she wants. She tried to find majorities. She tried to change such a law or such a decision. The judge is not possible to vote or make a decision against the law. And if we sometimes have a political situation in Germany in which we said we accept scars as a point of the personality and not as a symbol of a religion.
And unfortunately, this injustice on the name of Islam, and Islam didn't say that, but this is unfortunately many mistakes happen, especially with the women in the Middle East, in the Arab and Muslim countries, on the name of Islam. And we refuse that, and we say this is not Islam. This is the first point. I'm not talking about your cases specifically. I'm talking about the situation. This is the first point. The second point, if we want to change this, how can we change this? You will change this through impose another culture to be instead of these wrong things. I believe that any way to impose the cultures or to make a delusion for the culture of the Middle East, even if there are some mistakes, and all of us, we want to change it, but not through this way. Because I felt from your message, you go to change your feelings first, and after that come to talk. I believe that there is injustice. I believe that we need to change it. I believe that the best way, the freedom first in the Arab and Muslim countries, and then all these things will come in very smooth. Last point I want to say, I'm afraid when we became in this conference and start talking about the problems in the Muslim countries, to forget the main ideas about this conference. We want here to extend, to increase the overlaps areas. I agree with you, by the way, and don't say that I'm trying to say don't talk on this, but here and after this conference, let's concentrate, let's focus. We need to encourage each one here to put our hands together to talk about the overlaps. And then let's talk about how can we stop these problems in the future. This is my opinion. Maybe I will be wrong, but I accept what you said. And as I told you, yes, there is many mistakes on the name of Islam, and we disagree about that. But how we will deal with this is another issue.
Glad you did, in terms of how somebody is being radicalized, or where they're getting information about how to live, or what it is to balance their identity, where they're getting it. They're not going to a library to figure that out. They're getting it on the web. So my point to you on the media piece is it's not just about what's in front of the screen or what's on the satellite coming through the satellite dishes. It's what's on the laptop or the computer that this kid's wired to. And I don't care where your economic demographic is. Europe is saturated with computers, obviously. So my point is, as I think about solutions to the issue of how we can connect, it is to empower those young European Muslim voices who are trying to push back against others who are defining things for them, and to give them a chance through civil society support, through private sector support, to let them do what they know how to do, which is to push back in a way that's hip and cool, and it's going to get into the communities that they want to. And I see that all over Europe. I mean, I really wish I had a blank check that I could just give to these young kids who have really cool ideas about how to do this and how to make others feel like they can be European. And so I want to look at that space in terms of messaging, not just in terms of, I know I'm not LGBT.
Deliberately stop saying that, because in the UK we're too sort of easy with that term, and it's easy to just say diverse communities rather than saying black specifically. But what we're actually talking about, there are elements of racism. When people talk about discrimination against Muslims, sometimes it isn't about their faith, it is about the actual fact that they are from an ethnic community. And
the result of cultural traditions rather than Quranic injunctions. Constraints on women's freedoms, especially of movement, dress, and action, cannot always be squared with laws in Europe or America, or indeed with societal norms. Also, the women must be educated on what the Quran says and on their rights. They must be able to read the Quran for themselves. The trick is to make the success of Muslim women a point of pride in the community and in the family. Muslim women have shown themselves to be avid learners, good students, great workers, and inspiring leaders when they enter the workforce. Anything that can be done to increase the talent pool of Muslim women.
But if it's true that the historical success of Islam as a global civilization was characterized by its sustained cultural relevance for the local people, then Islam in the UK must be deemed to have failed its followers. For what we have in the UK today is a strange mix of cultural and religious dogma that satisfies no one and actually confuses everyone. Nowhere was this more apparent than when Muslims were faced with challenges speaking out against terrorism. For despite the overall condemnation Muslims felt, few were confident enough to speak publicly about the religious paradox of such crimes against humanity. And for the first time, those who had previously accepted the dichotomy of either culture or faith were not able to escape being labelled Muslims, even if they didn't do their prayers, wear the hijab, eat halal meat, or identify with a particular mosque. Moreover, non-Muslims were looking to Muslims to articulate and demystify their faith, and also its practices to a wider audience. And this confirmed what most Muslims had already feared, but had never really chosen to explore in detail. That not only were they very ignorant about their own faith, but that their practices were not predicated on any religious texts, but simply tribal practices. And so the voices that were heard were generally of those Muslims who purported to represent the ethnic Muslims, arguing that ethnicity was a primary marker of identity for Muslims. And so we needed to have the Muslim Council of Britain for Asian Muslims, the Muslim Association of Britain for the Arab Muslims, and the British Asian. And as for young people, well, they do what young people always do in situations where there is conflict. They find a way to negotiate and survive. But these young people live schizophrenic lives based on simultaneously pleasing their parents and their community, whilst also pursuing activities with their peers where they can drop the act of conforming to the image of being a practicing Muslim. But while surviving, they weren't actually flourishing. So young Muslim males in the UK who have access to free education, free healthcare and good living standards are proportionally more likely to be unemployed, have lower levels of education and to commit antisocial behaviour than non-Muslims.
Of course there's a role of the UN in the sense that 192 members or countries of the world belong to the UN. But I think the issues that we're talking about are not going to be decreed by a resolution of the Security Council. I mean, there are lots of resolutions, but we're talking about diversity, opportunity. There's already a Security Council resolution that calls for some of that. We're talking about implementation and enforcement and living with the difference, with different models. So we're not, this is something that countries and cultures sort out. I mean, they come together, of course, under this universal plan. But I think this is something that's below that particular radar, by and large, at the practical level.
Thank you very much. I'm Khaled here today. If you looked at Abu Dhabi television sort of 6 years ago, you would have seen that the domination of discourse, religious discourse, was from the Saudi Wahhabi school. And now we have that, over Ramadan, for example, almost every night, Sheikh Abdul Khalid was on television, and he'll be here today later on. I think you should sort of listen to what he's got to say and the message he's giving to young people in the Gulf and the Arab world to understand the sort of reform that's being spoken about, and it's not just wishy-washy thinking, it's reality, it's happening. The question about bulldozing Bradford, would you mind sort of giving me a quick reminder of what it was? I missed the last one. Yeah.
Many years, the Arab region has suffered from concentration of wealth and power at the very top. We have lost the middle class in most of the Arab countries. We have not had democracy and transparency. We've had huge corruptions. And truly, this has happened for many, many years. And unfortunately, we have seen the outcome of that. There were many causes for this. Some of them was attributed to the unsettled political situation in the region, the wars that has taken place, how many wars have taken place in the region, and not just with Israel, but also civil wars. But coming to what's happening now, and I'm truly very pragmatic in giving you my viewpoint, there are calls for reform emanating from the region, not just because our partners in the international community with whom we are proud to cooperate, the US, Europe and others, asking us to reform. There are calls for reform emanating from inside the Arab house. So our governments are finally beginning to listen. We have huge investments in education, as you're probably aware, some of the best schools and universities for boys and girls. We are also having calls for smaller public sector and greater power for the private sector, again allowing entrepreneurship, allowing the wealth to be distributed amongst the people. All the Arab countries are rich, whether they have oil or they do not have oil. Every country has some wealth, whether it's historical, tourism, water, agriculture, besides the oil that exists in the Gulf states. So there is calls now for reform. They are coming from the region. The governments are beginning to listen. And I think while working together in a more globalized, open society and working as Arabs, but working with our partners in the international community, we can move to a better future.
Haifa has, I think, said very articulately the issues of reform and transparency and governance that have to be at the center of the new Gulf. But I also think that since the questioner was the head of the American school in Abu Dhabi, the U.S. government at the government-to-government level, at the government-to-civil society level, is working hard in matters of reform. And particularly in terms of reform that I'm involved in is geared towards women, who have been very important and I think in many ways natural partners. But I think you as the head of the school have a particular responsibility in creating that sort of educational culture within the school that broadens the horizon. As the minister says, you know, the religion is something between the individual and God. There are certain precepts that we all subscribe to. Of course, obviously, those of us who are Muslims are also proud of being Muslim, but there's a certain way of living this life. If people don't, in the UAE, want to talk about the Taliban, I assume it's not because they believe they don't exist. Those of us in the United States who work on issues of reform and modernization and empowerment look at all the extremes. I mean, that exists because that's where the bulk of our work is. You have to change the mindset. And in this mindset, unfortunately, very often, if not almost always, is changing the man's mindset. So when I work on women's empowerment, I'm not just running around talking to women, because that's the easy part. It's talking to the men that this is not a threat, that this is a partnership, and this is in fact not only desirable for the security and stability and development of society over time, but it's important in terms of the religion also. So I think I mean, your responsibility is even larger than mine.
Just on the line of points about socio-political factors and reform, we're delighted.
Is it the hijab you're talking about? But I did get a question on Ramadan. I have to say that, in Malaysia, we have the greatest respect, as I said, for religion and also for our culture. And it is, as you know, inherent in Islamic tenet that during fasting month, Muslims must observe the Ramadan, which is the fasting. And if you are not able to fulfill the fasting during the Ramadan month, then you must not make a public display of it. There is nothing to say, there is no long arm which will reach into your home to say, thou shalt fast. It is between you and God. But out of respect, for other Muslims there, that if thou shalt break your fast, thou shalt not do it in public. That is the spirit of Islam in Malaysia. But we do have, implementers who are overzealous and who will take the rule and regulation, to the bitter end. And we do have cases where they have gone out, to take all these people who have flouted the rules and regulations, to make sure that they don't do it. It's more a question of respect than anything else. I didn't quite get your other question, but anyway, I think it is. I don't know what's happening, whether there's going to be any similarity between Turkey and Malaysia. But as I said, as I quoted what our Prime Minister has said, what is an Islamic government? What is a Muslim government? It is a government which is just and fair to each and every citizen in the country. That is Islamic. And that's the way we are going. We are not going to brand ourselves whether we are secular or we are totally Islamic. There is a place for everybody to practice the kind of race and religion you want. Because at the end of the day, the religion is a private matter between you and your God.
Thank you very much. The question about
It's about around the headscarf of the new president. In Turkey, there is now a very actual debate about Malaysia. And the question, is Turkey going to be like Malaysia? Or is Turkey making itself like Malaysia? And that the media is transporting reports and news and also photos about Malaysian government, saying that Malaysia is going to be very Islamic. And now, as in the last years, it was banned, it was forbidden on the streets to wear minarets. And now, even this year in Ramadan, in the fasting month, a new police will be established to list who are not fasting on the streets. I mean, it's something that I read from the Turkish media. I just want to ask it. It's now very much debated and discussed in Turkey, Malaysia, and the situation there. I just want to ask you: is it right? Is it forbidden to wear minarets on the streets, or is it forbidden to not to fast on the streets?
Sure. The last question, I think, and then we'll come back to you. Yeah, there's a lady here. Second, yeah.
Thank you. My name is Susan Durling. I'm originally from England, and I've been in Austria many years. I'm adjunct professor of Webster University here in Vienna, and I shall also be reporting on this conference for Webster University. Webster University is unique. I taught for many years at the University of Vienna cultural studies, comparative literature, and I'm very privileged now to teach for Webster University because of the diverse student body. And I've just been teaching a group of about 20 young people with nationalities, Bosnia, Kosovo, Albania, Bulgaria, Ukraine, Korea, Japan, and America, USA. And I must say, talking about cultural studies with these young people is very, very rewarding and shows that diversity can work. And I must say that we talked about cultural studies, but we never talked about religion, because whatever religion these young people had, I didn't feel was important for our talks about culture. I'm also the president of the Cosmopolitan Club in Vienna, that is an international women's organization. So these are only my credentials to tell you that I do work with a lot of various people. What I would like to know now is whether anybody sees a role for the UN in promoting diversity and in decreasing the divide between the two sides as we have seen before. Because after all, bulldozing Bradford can't really be an option.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
For Women's Feature Service. The question is to Minister Abdul Jalil. You referred in your speech to the intention of people who want to come together in this world. And you said the intention should be noble and honest. And you referred to a political and economic agenda. Could you elaborate on this political and economic agenda which seems to be keeping people in the world apart? Thank you.
Thank you. I think it is pretty obvious if you look around the world that there are some countries which might have other more pressing agenda than bringing people together. In Malaysia, we are very committed towards ensuring that the unity of the people should take precedence over every other issue. Because if the reality of the world is that all religions and races, we have our own peculiarities and our own needs. But if you were to only think of yourself, then I'm afraid there will be no one answer. In other words, I think for us as a nation, the development of our country will have to take precedence over individual interests or individual race or religion. So there has to be one unifying factor in a country which is diverse in terms of race and religion. So we are Malaysians first. And if you put that, if you put that common goal together, then that commonality will be able to overcome the problems of diversity.